Sammy the Bull was fixing the trial. He didn't win the trial fair and square.
The judge tried to prevent jury tampering by keeping the panel anonymous. But soon after the trial began, one of the jurors contacted Gravano through an intermediary, offering his not guilty vote in exchange for $60,000. He got the money, and Gotti was acquitted.
It shows you how tricky it is with the mob, because we had an anonymous juror. That's a little scary.
Fixed jury or not, some law enforcement officials argued that the U.S. Attorney's Office shouldn't have brought the case against Gotti in the first place. The FBI often assisted with federal prosecutions, but this time it withdrew its support entirely. Why did the FBI refuse to help federal prosecutors? The Bureau thought the case was weak and it opposed prosecution tactics.
When they finally brought that case, it was all old stuff. They had some horrible witnesses.
The prosecution's case largely depended on the testimony of mob informants who were viewed as untrustworthy. During her investigation, Assistant U.S. Attorney Diane Giacalone learned that one of Gotti's co-defendants, Wilfred Willie Boy Johnson, was a major informant for the FBI. In an effort to force Johnson to testify, Giacalone exposed him in court as a mob rat. Willie Boy still refused to take the stand. Even so, his exposure led to his murder on Gotti's orders 18 months later. The loss of a top informant was only one of the hurdles now facing the FBI. Agents assigned to Gotti's case also blamed the press for making him harder to catch. How did the media spotlight hurt the FBI's investigation? With Gotti's name constantly in the news, agents find fewer informants and would-be witnesses willing to come forward.
It poses a significant problem for us because there are fewer and fewer people who would be inclined to want to help us in any way, shape, or form, either because they legitimately kind of like the guy or they're really afraid of him.
Those trying to bring Gotti down believed the stories about him were one-sided.
They did make him out to be a superhero, where, to me, as a law enforcement, he was a criminal.
Mr. Gotti was a guy who'd been to jail for shooting a man in the gut in a bar, but you never heard about that because that wasn't what the media thought the people wanted.
Some journalists argued they were just reporting the facts.
John Gotti was acquitted. You can't change that. We didn't make him a household word. He and the failure of the government to convict him is what helped propel him into the big name that he was.
Both sides agree that the media coverage did place additional pressure on federal crime fighters.
When Gotti was showing up on the covers of magazines, the word came from the Justice Department, get this guy.
Gotti's highly publicized courtroom victories proved to be a turning point in the fight to bring him down. Under increasing pressure, the New York's FBI office made Gotti its top priority. Agents installed a $100,000 video camera in an apartment 2 blocks away from the Ravenite to record clear images of mobsters at Gotti's weekly meetings. Why did Gotti start holding these regular meetings? To test the allegiance of Gambino family members.
It was a little bit tougher to plot behind his back if they're always kind of around one another and everybody's hearing what everybody else is talking about.
Through these meetings, Gotti also learnt about the inner workings of the family and secured a cut of each of his captain's illegal earnings. Ultimately, Gotti's move was a foolish one, allowing the FBI to videotape those who enter or exit the club. However, the tapes contained no incriminating conversation. Did the silent tapes help build a case against Gotti? Yes, they helped prove a criminal organization was at work. Once prosecutors had established the existence of an active criminal organization, they could make use of a powerful legal weapon, a federal law called RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Under RICO, prosecutors can go after individuals who are part of a criminal organization.
Getting them together at meetings would go a long way towards putting that they're together and they may be in the same enterprise.
But while Gotti made it easy for agents to videotape his associates, he still made it difficult to tape his most sensitive conversations.
John got up and walked away from the area where we had the bug and the ravenite on a number of occasions. We could tell he was going someplace else.
The FBI was closing in, and Gotti's time as a free man was fast coming to an end.
You think I would tolerate this crap if I was home?
How the government finally got their man is next, in the conclusion of The Final Report. April 1989, New York City. FBI agents had planted bugging devices in John Gotti's headquarters, the Ravenite Social Club. But they were having trouble capturing incriminating conversations, as Gotti kept leaving the room. Where was Gotti going to hold his conversations? To an apartment above the Ravenite. FBI agent George Gabriel had heard about it from an informant.
I said, listen, we're hearing this guy disappear. Is there someplace else in the building that he's going? And it came back that there was an apartment 2 stories above the club that he was going to have these really secret meetings.
This apartment, number 10, was occupied by the widow of a Gambino soldier. The FBI decided to bug the apartment as well. November the 21st, 1989. In the middle of the night, 2 members of the FBI broke into the widow's apartment while she was away and planted a bug in the living room. Within 3 months, the Bureau was predicting Gotti's downfall. Why was the FBI so confident? The Bureau recorded Gotti clearly discussing murder and other crimes.
You tell this punk, I meet John Gotti, you'll sever your mother head off.
The tapes led to the arrest of Gotti and his 2 top lieutenants, Sammy the Bull Gravano and Frank Locascio. On February the 17th, 1992, prosecutors played the tapes in court. For the first time, a jury could clearly hear the Teflon Don describing murders that he ordered.
He's got to get whacked. You want to challenge the administration? You will meet the challenge. And you're going to, mother.
On tape, Gotti discussed the murders of 3 Gambino family members, including Robert DiBernardo, or DB, whom Gotti ordered killed shortly after Paul Castellano's assassination. The revelations on the tapes were stunning. So was the courtroom testimony of Sammy Gravano. It was the first time such a high-level mobster had broken the mafia's code of silence against his own boss. Why did Gravano now turn against Gotti? Gravano no longer trusted Gotti and was afraid of becoming the fall guy. At a pre-trial hearing, prosecutors played some of the government's Ravenite tapes for the first time. In one conversation, Gravano heard Gotti placing the blame for the murder of Gambino soldier Louis de Bono squarely on him. Taped statements like these convinced Gravano to abandon his boss and save himself.
Not only did he hear himself being implicated in these murders, he also got to see the treachery that John Gotti was capable of.
Gravano testified for 9 days, revealing his involvement in 19 murders. Considering his violent past, many wondered whether Gravano would be a credible witness. How could the jury trust Gravano's testimony? He admitted to his crimes and told the jury about the deal he'd struck with prosecutors. In court, prosecutors introduced Gravano as a murderer, explaining that Sammy the Bull faced severe penalties if caught lying on the stand.
We were able to establish with the jury that it was in his self-interest to tell the truth, because if we caught him in one lie, his deal was off and he goes to jail for the rest of his life without parole.
On April the 2nd, 1992, Gotti was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The sentencing brought to a close a chapter in the mafia's history, as well as rejuvenating the government's attack on the mob. Why was Gotti's conviction a turning point in the fight against organized crime? It led to future convictions around the country. Former federal prosecutor Patrick Cotter tells the final report the Gotti conviction paved the way for prosecutions in other cities.
When we took down Gotti, we took down the most visible, but also the most powerful mobster in the country. Plus, we also took a good shot at New Jersey, Connecticut, Philadelphia, Boston. Other prosecutors there did great work.
In the 2 years after Gotti's conviction, Sammy the Bull Gravano's revelations helped the government convict more than 36 gangsters, drug dealers, and corrupt union officials.
He was sort of like, if you will, a nuclear bomb. All you had to do was point him at people, and they would plead guilty.
Gravano served only 5 years in prison before entering the Witness Protection Program. This ushered in an era when high-level mobsters began dropping their codes of omerta or silence.
Organized crime's success was its reliance on omerta, the secrecy of the organization, the fact that you can trust your fellow wise guy not to give you up in your criminal conduct. Today, that trust no longer exists.
Since Gotti was sent to prison, more than 225 Gambino family members have been put behind bars, including 11 bosses and top lieutenants. After more than 2 decades of prosecutions, the mafia no longer controls the leadership of America's Big Four labor unions. They do, however, still exert their influence by infiltrating at the local level. Although crime fighters agree the Gambino family has been significantly weakened since the days of Gotti, it is still one of the richest and most powerful criminal organizations in the United States. The family is worth hundreds of millions of dollars and has a workforce of 200 captains and soldiers and more than 3,000 associates. As for the 2 men who once ruled the Gambino crime family with such brutality, in 2001, Sammy the Bull Gravano went back to prison after pleading guilty to drug conspiracy charges. He was sentenced to 20 years at a maximum security prison. John Gotti was sent to a prison in Illinois, where he continued to run the Gambino family through his son, John. In 1996, the jailed Gotti stepped down under pressure from the other mob bosses. In 1999, Daily News journalist Jerry Capisi obtained 4 hours of prison video footage. This showed Gotti being visited by his daughter Victoria and his brother Peter.
Right now I'm cursed. I'm stuck in this jail here, and that's the end of it. You know, there's nothing I can do about it.
He was angry for being in the position he was in and in despair over the fact that there was never going to be a day when he was going to walk outside as a free man once again.
You know why I'm here? It took them $80 million and 3 lying cases and 7 rats that killed 100 people in the Witness Protection Program to finally frame me. You understand?
It was amazing. He kept saying over and over how much mail he gets from people around the country, from people all over the world.
I got a letter from an 8-year-old kid. An 8-year-old kid. He says, I like your family values. That kid from Iowa. Probably got to get up in the morning and go feed cows and shovel horse.
On June the 10th, 2002, after serving 10 years, John Gotti died of cancer in a prison hospital. Back in Queens, New York, hundreds turned out to watch his funeral procession. By 2003, the US government had convicted Gotti's 2 brothers, Peter and Richard, on mob-related charges. His son, John, served 6.5 years in prison for racketeering. To date, he's been in court 3 more times on RICO charges. Each case ended in a mistrial. Law enforcement officials believe that the current acting Gambino boss is John Jackinose D'Amico, one of Gotti's close associates. Though the mob still remains significant for the FBI, more recent events have taken priority.
9/11 obviously changed things dramatically, and the federal law enforcement authorities correctly are much more focused on terrorism.
The number of FBI agents assigned to organized crime units has declined since 2001. Yet despite this reduction, the amount of mob-related cases brought by the Bureau remains steady as agents continue to develop high-level informants.
The mistake will be for somebody to stand up soon